Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Master of None podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Murphy. I'm a bit under the weather, so I'll apologise straight away if I sound like I'm blocked up, because I am. So I'm a bit excited this evening. I have quite a special guest on, someone that's quite large in the rugby community, and I'm very excited to get talking to him. It's some may know him as Robbie Owens, but I think majority of people will know him as Squidge Rugby. Hello, Robbie. How are you?
Hi, thank you. From that introduction, I thought you had someone else on as well.
Yeah,
I thought we were getting.
Also, Brian O'Driscoll.
Yeah. He's made time.
Yeah.
He's
And
climbing through the window now.
he's for some reason in my bedroom.
Yeah.
But
Whoa, I won't ask any further
yeah,
questions.
look, what happens in here stays in here. But no, thank you very much, Robbie. Appreciate it. You're obviously very busy. This is a
thank you
very
for having me.
busy time of year for you, with the Six
Yeah.
Nations ongoing. So look, as I say, Robbie has started a channel over 2 years ago, December 17th, if my research does me correctly, and
Yeah.
now with 117,000 subscribers and has amassed over 12 million views.
Okay.
Does that scare you when you hear stuff like that?
A little bit, yeah. I stopped following it that closely because I very quickly passed any realistic targets I set for myself. So I sort of had goals for things I wanted to achieve by the World Cup and so on. And I passed them pretty quickly just because I didn't realize how big a gap in the market there was.
Yeah.
So as I said, I don't really check how many subscribers I've got that often or how many views I'm getting. You know, I'll glance, I'll have a look. But yeah, it is sometimes when I hear them in front of me, it's like, oh wow, that's more people than I can fit in my living room.
Yes,
That's a few.
yes, exactly. Yeah. When you started off, then did you have certain expectations? Were you just doing it because you enjoyed it? What was your, or even were you anxious putting up videos for everyone to see that and stuff? Because go ahead.
Yeah. The first video, I know I was really anxious when it went up. I was really nervous because I had that weird period where I'd finished uni and I sort of didn't quite know what to do, and I'd floated by in working for the uni for a bit, and then my contract ended there, and I sort of had a few months where I was unemployed. I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't have all my friends moved back to wherever they were from, and I was sort of just doing nothing. And I accidentally got a job I hated.
That was the delivery, wasn't it? Delivery driver.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you have done your research. Fair play.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I sort of then from there started to write the first two videos really in my head. I made them, I put them up, and then when I put the first one up, I sent it to a couple of people because I've written a few bits for Blood and Mud. I knew Paul Williams, who's quite a big figure in Welsh Rugby Twitter, followed me on Twitter. So I sort of sent it to a few people and I posted it on Reddit. And then because I was just anxiously looking at the page, just went, okay, I'm just going to go to the closest cinema. I'm going to just see whatever the next film was. And I talked to my friend, my closest friend is Nusha there. She happened to be working that night. We moaned about Brexit to each other for a bit. And then I went in and I saw Darkest Hour starring Gary Oldman, which is okay.
And quite an ironic link to Brexit as well, the Darkest Hour. So,
Yeah.
Because I know, actually, that's an interesting segue then, because I know for your Sam Warburton video, you went into the cinema as well, and when you came back out, then you had Sam Warburton had responded to your video. That must have been incredible.
Yeah. For a while, that was my tradition. That was, I would just, when I put a video up, so I wasn't checking incessantly, I would just go and see a film. So I went to see the new Mission Impossible, which I loved. I thought was so good. And then I came out thrilled by what I'd seen, turned my phone on to 200 odd Twitter notifications. Like they wouldn't even load when I tried to look at them, and just the text from my brother saying, Sam liked your video, which is kind of the first real interaction I'd had with an actual player.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that video, it definitely sticks out in my mind because I kind of fell into the crowd of people that you were kind of highlighting, because my level of rugby insight is nowhere near yours, but it's very easy to see Sam Warburton play. He can seem like he's not in the game, but he's actually doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, if you will, and working very hard. So it was a great video for me because it really opened to my mind how to look at rugby games and how to look at player performances, because it's easy for a winger to make a break and score a try, and that's obviously brilliant. But as you say, like in that lines test coming on, slowing down those rucks at the time, that was a huge part of them coming back to level that series. So that's I kind of want to get actually. I want to also get in because a lot of people might not know that you were born in Nottingham. Is that correct?
Yes.
Even
Yeah,
though
I
you're a
was.
massive Welsh fan.
Yeah. My parents were both teachers. They moved to Nottingham just before I was born, about a year before I was born, after they got married. So then, I was born in Nottingham. I grew up there, hence having the wrong accent. I only really sound Welsh at all when I get angry, which probably says a lot. Yeah.
I'm from a county called Cavan in Ireland, which is so I live in Galway, and I've been told that as well. Like I suppress the accent for a lot of the times, and then when I get passionate or angry, it all comes steaming out. So I assume that's the same for yourself.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
And did you ever, when you were coming up as a kid, was there ever any chance of you supporting England, or was that very much kicked out?
No, absolutely not. It was something my dad tried to kind of try and bargain initially, was that he was okay if I supported England in other sports, but not rugby.
Okay.
And it was always like, and I didn't, I couldn't bring myself
exactly.
Because rugby was the only sport I invested in, really. I'd watched the odd football game, but I wasn't that interested, and everything else. Whereas I was always very much in the Wales camp.
And how was that growing up then in schools and all, as you're the only Welsh fan in an English school?
That was it. There was me. There was one other Welsh kid in school called Alid, appropriately enough.
Of course.
Of course. And we did we became friends because I went to his wedding last year. We became friends basically because we were the two Welsh kids.
Yeah.
And once a year, when the Six Nations happened, it was the only day on which a lot of kids in school cared about rugby, because they knew it would get to me and Alid
exactly.
It was long.
Yeah, that was
so
massive
it became
games.
Exactly. It was the one game a year that everyone in school watched, was the England-Wales game. So that was always tricky, but it was great if we won, because I had that over them for the whole year. If ever rugby came up at all.
Monday mornings are normally tough, but not after a big game like that. If you get the win. But did you play much then rugby as a kid? I'm interested to see, you have an amazing way of looking at a game, an amazing way of analysing a game, and I'm just wondering, did you play much as a kid? Were you involved in coaching at any stage?
Oh, thank you. Not really. I played for a few years. I was an average to poor sort of wing fullback. I didn't play at a very high level at all. I still play touch nowadays. So I've played quite a lot of touch rugby. That's probably at this point more than I had contact rugby. But I never really played to a high level, and it mostly just came from, I've always watched a lot of rugby. I've always sort of watched incessantly everything. So I'd always, watched it as it happened, but from about the 2009 Lions tour onwards, I've just watched absolutely everything I could see. I just began watching every game in both the Pro 14 and the Premiership each weekend I could. I was watching if Romania or Uruguay were playing whoever. I was trying to watch those games. I was just trying to watch everything I could. Often, I'd usually watch Wales' games 2 or 3 times back. Pardon me. And it just became a case of absorbing all of it. There was this thing, I mentioned it on another podcast I was on recently, but Quentin Tarantino said once that I never went to film school. I went to films because he watched so many films. It had the same impact as him going to film school and learning all of this. And I kind of, I guess, had that approach with rugby.
And was this is organic? This is just, you just literally wanted to watch this much rugby, and it wasn't as in like, I'm trying to learn this, or it was just organic. I just love watching this. Even like the tier 2 rugby can be tough to watch sometimes.
Yeah.
So even watching that's impressive.
Yeah. Oh, especially when it's like a 3 a.m. kickoff.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember one morning waking up to watch Georgia against Samoa at like 4 a.m. and opening my fridge because I woke up really hungry when my alarm went off. And all I had left was like 2 boxes of instant mashed potato. So I sat there and in either half just ate this instant mash, feeling miserable in the dark, watching, because it was like a 10-all draw.
Oh, wow.
In the end. That's always stuck with me.
Quite high scoring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
For
Georgia,
classic.
A whole tribe. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, to have that love for and passion for it at an early age. That's incredible. And as you said, not having played a whole pile. So, just again on your unique kind of style of editing and how you record videos, I notice, and I'm assuming it's intentional, but if I watch
Yeah.
a video of yours, I will have to pause the video around 20 times just to see what you've
Yeah.
have wrote in the corner. To you put in
Yeah.
little clips. I'm assuming that's also intentional. You want people to do this.
Yeah. It was something I thought about when I was. It's something I've always thought about. When I've done other stuff in terms of when I've done podcasts in the past, when I've done stand up, whatever. I'd always thought about, well, what am I doing in this medium? What makes it special and specific to this? So when I was thinking about a YouTube channel, I thought, well, the thing is, people can watch it over and over. They can rewind 10 seconds. They can pause at any point in the way you couldn't if you're watching it on TV. You wouldn't if you listen to a podcast. You tend to listen to when you're doing something else, when you're, driving, you're walking, you're commuting, whatever. And so that was always something that was there, sort of baked into it. Was I wanted to make it, to design it for YouTube. And it's become slightly less so because I think it's got caught up in partly in just time and everything, but they're still there today because I feel like it's part of what it is and how it's designed to be watched.
So do you find yourself, you think you have say a final draft made up, and then when you're looking at it back you might think of something else, and do you have to go and add that in then, or like how long does it take you to go from recording to editing and then to finally the final product being up on YouTube?
So I write quite a few drafts. That's just the way I write. So I tend to get it to quite a polished state, and then I'll record it. And then I'll, over a period like the World Cup and like the Six Nations, I work far quicker and I put fewer kind of little hidden jokes in just because I want to get the thing up. So I can, on times like this, I work at probably just below an hour editing for each minute seen on screen, probably about 45 minutes for each minute.
Wow.
Whereas I can go up significantly during the World Cup. And sometimes there'll be bits in which I'm just cutting something together. Like if I'm doing a bit of analysis on 10 seconds of the game, I know the clips I'm looking for. I'm not having to go through looking for them from sometimes just from that one game, but sometimes I'm thinking, okay, I need a shot of George Ford, or it's worse when it's props and stuff, when there isn't a close-up of them and I'm talking about them and I'm going through 3 games or something trying to find it. That's always the worst bit, is trying to find a close-up of a player when you can't.
Recently, that's after sparking something. I think it was the Wales, one of your Wales videos, but I can't think of his name now. The number 13. He played underage for England, and now he's playing for Wales.
Oh, Nick Tompkins.
Sorry. Yeah. There was a video, I think it was on him, but you were trying to find some underage footage of someone playing. But you even had a little note saying it took me so long to find actual footage of him playing.
Yeah. Oh, and there's moments like that come up all the time. But sometimes I just get lucky. Like there was a clip, I'd written it into the script without thinking how long it was going to take, of a try Dan Bigger scored against the Dragons like 9 years ago. And I happened to get lucky. I found someone had posted it on YouTube and it had like 200 views. And I eventually found it.
Is that the one where he goes to the corner intentionally?
Yes.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. He goes. He does the Carlos Spencer thing, putting it down right in the corner and missing the conversion. Yeah.
So you're obviously a bit of a perfectionist then, because a lot of people would have just said, "To hell with this. I'm just not going to try." After a certain time. But that's obviously, if it's in your head, you just kind of want to get it and put it onto into the video.
Yeah, that's it. I've always been a bit of a perfectionist and workaholic and all of that, and I'm quite happy to put in far more time than I probably should for the sake of my own health and
sanity.
Sanity, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. But there we go. Yeah, if the video comes out well, then I suppose I'll remember how it came out in a month's time than I will the fact that it was 2 a.m. when I finished it.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a good mindset, obviously, to live by. Because even it stuck in my head because I couldn't believe that you went into that much effort. But your Ireland-Scotland video that you just uploaded.
Yes.
So the first try Ireland score, it's a decoy from Keane Healy. You then went and found that they ran a similar play against Japan in the World Cup. Did that just come to your head, or?
So I remember really, I forgot to credit this, but I remembered that they had run that, and I was pretty sure it's against Japan. And I was meaning to go back and skim through the full game to find it. And then I noticed that Murray Kinsella tweeted that it with a timestamp. So thankfully, that saved me a lot of work.
Okay.
But like, I remembered it had happened. As I say, I was 95% sure it was against Japan, and they were facing, that side of the pitch. But he saved me. Murray Kinsella saved me some work there, and I meant to pop in a little thank you in the corner, but some of these things just slip my mind when I'm in a period of I've got to get this up, I've got to move on to the next one and the next one. But yeah, it's sometimes I'll just make links. I'll just go, oh, that looks familiar, and then when I watch it back, I'll be, oh, they tried to do that against Japan. They tried to do that in. Same thing with the move Ireland scored off against the All Blacks with Jacob Stockdale.
Yes.
That they'd ran in the World Cup 3 years prior. And again, I remembered them doing it. I remembered because it looked interesting.
And even the England trying to rip off the South African scrum or maul in the middle of the pitch. But then you have that ability then to see where it went wrong. And even that Irish try, or the Ireland trying that play against Japan, you still obviously sifted through a lot of footage because you highlighted the fact that Murray was talking to Carberry throughout the passage. So again, how does your mindset work on that? Is that something you also remembered, or was that something that you just spotted when you were sifting through the footage?
Yeah, that was it. I spotted it when I went back because at the time it was just an interesting play that didn't work. And then once I had an example of it really working, it's easier to go back and go, okay, so what's different between them? Why does this one work and this one doesn't, when normally they're the same move? Why is it that? And then you begin to notice that it's Murray not communicating with Sexton in the way he was with Carberry, and then the other big factor is Fumi Tanaka stood in the background pointing and screaming the whole time in a way none of the Scottish forwards rather were. They were just ready for the next play because it didn't look at all like they were going to pull what they did. Whereas you could kind of tell something was coming, even if you didn't know what it was with the one against Japan.
There's definitely a job for you if some team ever wants to hire you as analytics or something along the lines of that, because you obviously have a very good memory.
Oh, thank you. I had a weird email a couple of weeks ago from someone just saying, it was like terrible grammar, all lowercase, everything, just saying, I have an offer you can't refuse. I want to bring you into our national team setup as a video analyst. And I replied saying, it didn't say what country. And I replied saying, that's nice, but could I have some details, please, such as what country? And they never replied. So for all I know, it was the All Blacks.
Well, yeah, what if it was Andy Farrell and he's just not very good at grammar? You passed up on a great opportunity, man.
Growing up in the north, yeah.
yeah. Also, I wanted to highlight, I'd say a lot of your time is spent when you're editing these videos coming up with funny names for Johnny Sexton. I want to get your mindset on that. Where did that start? Is that just something that was in your own head?
You mean Jelly Bean Sex Hang?
I think my favorite was, what was it? Johnny Bob's Sex Pants. I really enjoyed that one.
It was, honestly, I made 2 videos in a row on Leinster, and in one of them, because when you talk about Leinster, you talk about Sexton a lot, I had been writing his name so many times that I just wrote Sex Thing instead. And a guy commented saying, I can't believe you got Sexton's name wrong. This is a huge mistake. I'm unsubscribing. And I decided, just to amuse myself, that I wouldn't refer to him by his proper name again. So I then wrote that once of, whatever the first one was, and just enjoyed writing that and coming up with that so much that I've just continued doing it because it makes me laugh. And I don't care if anyone else finds it funny. I think it is.
I can't believe that commenter has no idea the impact he's had on all of your Ireland and Leinster videos. So outside of, say, Six Nations cycles and World Cup cycles, what's the thought process of what to make a video on?
That's quite interesting because I've been caught up mostly in covering the World Cup and covering the Six Nations and then the Team of the Year stuff as well. And then before that, I did a video on every World Cup team. So a lot of my time's gone into that. Generally, it's just been things I've found interesting. So I did a video on La Rochelle, which no one asked for, no one requested, but I just thought their story was interesting. Same with before the Six Nations. I did one on France that I felt that was the most interesting change of any of the teams ahead of the Six Nations. So I looked at that. And the Wayne Pivac one I did, I kind of wanted to mirror what I'd done with Gatland about a year and a half earlier. So it tends to be that. And I've got a few things I want to do post Six Nations where I'm thinking, oh, that's an interesting story, or something will just stand out. So it might be a run with a club. It might be, like Leicester Tigers fired their fourth boss in like 6 months. And he kind of went, well, actually, that's interesting. And does it work with the format that I do, in the way that if I were to do a video on the Saracen scandal, yes, there's something interesting there, but at the same time, it's not very visual. There's not much I can put in. It's me talking through the facts.
Okay, that's interesting. So that would lead to the question then: have you tried videos before and then ended up just getting rid of them and not uploading them because you didn't feel like it was up to your certain standards of videos?
There's stuff I've written. There's a lot of drafts that as I say, I began writing one on the Saracens thing, and then realized actually I don't know how I do this unless I did it like the one I did on Israel Folau, where I just kind of talked through it to camera, which is far less interesting. I don't think I've got as far as actually starting and then not uploading, there's one video I didn't finish, which is mostly done, which was a roundup of World Cup games, including the third place playoff that I missed, just because I was knackered when it came to doing it. And I edited about 2 minutes, then my body just collapsed. I was going to put that up after the one on the final and just didn't get to it. So that I may finish sometime after the Six Nations. I may actually just go back to and go, well, here we are. Here it is. There you go.
People will still watch it though, because it's, again, like your style and stuff. It's just fascinating because, even though it's been months since that, chances are you're going to find out something new or see something that you would never have seen. So that's interesting that that's the way you do it. And do you feel then obviously a certain pressure, obviously, to get videos up at a certain time? Have you got much backlash?
Yeah, I can. And I think now that it's also my full-time job as well, if I go more than a month without uploading a video, it can be that, actually, I'm not eating, But it does also mean that I can set aside my days to do it. I can actually pour the time into it. It's not like when I was working a inverted commas real job and trying to make the videos, it was quite tough to find the time to do literally anything else because they are time consuming. As I say, I've sped up doing it over the last year or so. But I've got completely off track of the top question, but yeah, sometimes, sometimes I do, but I try to make sure that I can find something interesting ahead of giving into the kind of the pressure of YouTube. And I've read enough articles and so on, and listened to podcasts and so on about, or by people that have been burnt out by YouTube. There's a really good one by a guy called Matt Lees, who I've listened to his podcast for years. And then he had an article in The Guardian talking about he had a video go viral, and it led to this massive spiral of just mental health issues because he felt so much pressure to do things because of one of his videos being really successul, and it was kind of the most miserable. Anyway, sorry, I've given you 3 different tangents on one question.
It's always interesting to listen to it. No, I can see where people that happens because, as like you said, this is your living now. So it's not like in most jobs where you can just show up and clock the hours in and you're not going to get fired. Where this is very much dependent on views, which is obviously, but I know you're doing some stints on Welsh TV now. How's that going? Yeah,
that's really exciting. So I've done some bits for Scrum 5, which I grew up watching. There was a bit they did on Marty Holler when he was still at the Ospreys. That was the first time I kind of discovered analysis. It was the thing that made me interested in it. Just a really interesting thing on how he approached the breakdown. I was like, that's really interesting, and I've kind of since then always looked into more detail. So it's been quite exciting to actually sit down and see myself introduced on this show that I used to watch whilst eating my Sunday dinner every week as a kid and as a teenager when I was living at home. So that was surreal and exciting. And because the episode went out over Christmas as well, my first one, it meant I was at home, so I watched it with my mum and brother, which was even more surreal.
Was there a lot of nerves before that appearance?
There was a bit, yeah. Yeah, because obviously it was all recorded and done in advance, so I could sit down and watch it. But I did feel nervous in a way I don't normally when I put a video up. Knowing because it was also going out to a different audience, and there would have been a lot of people who didn't know who I was, didn't watch what I'd done before, who were just sitting down to watch this for the highlights or for whatever, and then coming across what I'd done. So that was quite exciting and quite, as you say, nerve-wracking.
Yeah, as you said, your subscribers know who you are and what you're about, whereas these people watching on TV, it's a whole different type of audience, as you say. So,
Yeah.
but that's exciting. That opens up a lot more doors. Is that something you would like to see yourself going towards, more TV, or are you still happy with the YouTube side?
I would like to, in all honesty, vary what I'm doing more. Because I feel like sometimes it does feel as though I am with the greatest will in the world and I enjoy doing it. I'm glad people appreciate it, making the same video over and over again. And I want to try both varying the content I'm doing on the YouTube channel more after the Six Nations and when there isn't a major tournament on. And also, trying to do other things and work in, whether it's TV, whether it's whatever, just try and do some different bits. Just because, as I say, I've spent 2 years doing this. And there comes a point where you go, okay, I'm doing this again, and I don't want to, because I'm not saying this is actually happening now, but I don't want to get to a point where I'm phoning it in, where I'm just going, oh, actually, I'll just hack this out because I know that'll work, because I know that's what I do here.
Yeah, I've heard that too before. When has the enjoyment waned at all, or do you still really enjoy doing these videos? As you say, you put a lot of time into them.
Yeah, no, I do, I genuinely do, and I do appreciate that this is what I do, and that people watch it and people consume it, and that I've got a platform to say these things, and as I say, people appreciate that. That is enormously appreciated, and I'd be lying if I said there weren't times in which I've kind of gone, oh, now I've got to go try and do this, or now I've got to do that. But on the whole, some 80% of the time, I probably more than that. But I enormously do appreciate and enjoy doing it and making them and getting all of this out there.
Yeah, as you said, but that's human nature. You know what I mean? When you're putting so much time into it, but look, it's gotten you to on this podcast, which last week had 32 listens. So so
nice.
Where would you if you would have said 2 years ago, I'm going to be on this podcast, you wouldn't have believed it, would you, Robbie?
Well, 2 years ago, I was doing a podcast that had, not to boast, but maybe about 40 listeners.
Oh wow. I can't imagine the dizzying heights of 40 listens.
Or someday, this week you probably have a drop off because I'm here, but week after, maybe when Brian O'Driscoll's out of your bedroom.
Yeah. He's very quiet here, isn't he? In the background. But yeah, so the YouTube channel, it's motoring along, it's doing well, but then a few months ago, disaster strikes. And Six Nation makes a copyright claim on all your content, and your channel's at risk. So, can you talk us through that, kind of what happened, and your thought process at that time?
Yeah. So I had an email, I think a few days before it all kind of happened publicly, from a representative of the Six Nations, saying, "Please take all of your content down, or we will take action. You've used your stuff." Citing a couple of laws. I responded saying, this is my position. I'm willing to talk about this. Obviously, I respect your position. I feel like because of these laws that I looked up, I have an entitlement to do it as, fair usage and so on. They then reply saying, no, please, really, without wanting to get too into it, but quite patronizing and snarky response, and I replied saying, I want to see a specialist about this. I want to try and approach a lawyer or something and get back to you. And then about 2 days later, before I had a chance, they'd taken down, I think it was like 22 of my videos. Some of them had used seconds of Six Nation footage. And then, but all I did was I then tweeted about this and tweeted what had happened. And within hours, because I'd gone to bed the previous night when they'd been taken down, because I think they came down at about 11 p.m. and I tweeted about it the following morning. And I had gone to bed kind of terrified because, as I said, they put in enough strikes for the channel to be closed inside 7 days if they weren't resolved. And and I was losing not just my livelihood and what I did for a living. I was essentially being fired, as we kind of make the allusion to earlier. But I was also losing kind of this portfolio I'd worked on for 2 years. Is that I built this, I put all of this work into this thing, and here it was. Anyone could go out and watch it. Anyone, say I want to try and pitch something to someone else down the line, I can go, okay, go and look at these things I did. That was no longer going to exist. All of it was going to disappear. All of it was going to go. It felt like the whole 2 years had been wasted. But then inside a few hours of the tweet going up, there was a petition that had been signed, I think literally thousands of times. The Six Nations received hundreds of emails and messages and tweets. There was one in particular where they tweeted, because I think France were playing a warm-up game that day. They tweeted something like, how do you think this game's going to go? And they had 40 plus responses. All of them were about them taking my videos down. And that was amazing. And the level of kind of support I felt made me actually feel so much warmer, so much more included, and like there were people that had my back. And it was really lovely and gratifying and motivating as well, to feel like I have to do these people proud and I have to try and keep going for them. So yeah, it meant an awful lot. And to their credit, within a few hours, the Six Nations had got back to me. They were willing to talk about it. They got, one of their bosses of communication on the phone. And by the Monday morning, I think it happened on Saturday, by the Monday morning, it was resolved and the videos were going back up and they were talking to YouTube about covering for everything. We'd reached an agreement. And so it was like, I can't say more than fair play to them for the moment they saw that this meant something to their audience. They went, actually, we're going to do something about it. There was some legal precedent that they followed through on. That's their business, whatever, that's fine. But the moment they saw, actually, this is wider than that, they backed down and they let me carry on. And they were willing to talk and reach an entirely fair and reasonable agreement.
That must have been quite the roller coaster of emotions for those few days.
Yeah, it was a hell of a few days.
That's
hell of a weekend.
Yeah, it just shows you the strength of your subscriber base. That's how they reacted. But I'm always amazed at these Six Nations. I don't know if their thought process that people aren't going to watch the games because of your videos. I'm always shocked by this because they still have to watch the games. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still going to watch all the games. So you having a couple of seconds of Scotland versus France, I just don't get it, the thought process. But look at, they obviously they hire people to scour for that sort of stuff. So that's great. Yeah, that was obviously a tough time, but you got through that. So it's kind of we're going to get onto some Six Nations soon, but I kind of to end your YouTube channel kind of the discussion. So you have videos, obviously, such as you started off with, so what went wrong with Ospreys, and then you have another, a video such as the Israel-Folau situation. So has there been a certain video that you've made that stuck out? Is there a certain highlight, a favorite as such?
I think it's an obvious one to go to, but the video made on the World Cup final, I am incredibly proud of. It was basically just a full week of me working on that one thing. But I felt like, because I did a kind of live premiere of it on YouTube, and so I think something like 2,000 people watched it go out live, and obviously more people since, far more, and it was the one time I've kind of been able, through watching it as it went out live and having people's feedback and reactions along the side, to almost watch it objectively as an observer. And I kind of sat there as it went out going, oh, actually, I got this right. I did this. I kind of nailed this without being, because I'm normally, own harshest critic and everything. And that was the one moment where I went, oh, actually, this is good. Like, I'm really proud of this. I'm really happy with this. So I say I'm really proud of that. The Ospreys one, as you mentioned, I now look at and it feels really rough around the edges, but I'm really proud of what I achieved there and the fact I managed to put it together in that way. And the one I did on Wales, France, and the last Six Nations, I really like as well. That's the one I sometimes go back to just to look at in terms of, I feel like there are things I went for and jokes in that one that I felt really landed, I was really proud of and I liked. And I think that tied together. It was a script I was really happy with. I'm sure there's plenty more. I'm sure there's loads more that I like and think stand out. But those are the ones that immediately come to mind.
I would have lost a bet there. If I was the bet, I would have said the Sam Warburton one.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, no, the Sam Warburton one. And partly because Sam Warburton saw it and liked it,
Yeah.
and then mentioned it on a book tour and everything. So that was really exciting.
Was that? Would you say that was the video that kind of? What video for you was when you kind of said, okay, I'm actually, this is really going somewhere. This is taking off.
It was pretty much that Sam Warburton one. The Conor Murray one had done really well and is still somehow the most watched video on the channel. But that kind of felt like a fluke. That kind of felt like, oh, this one took off and lots of people watched it, and then it dipped right down for the next couple I made. Whereas the Sam Warburton one felt like everyone that saw it seemed to tweet about it, and it was getting shared so widely. And I suddenly had Rugby Dump and had all kinds of rugby blogs and places talking about it, and then Sam Warburton himself talking about it. And that felt like a watershed moment. That felt like, oh, actually, this is a big deal in a way I didn't anticipate when I started the channel.
Just a quick tangent, but did you see his first touch during the weekend there? He was behind the post.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I love him. And how excited he was to see it got caught on camera as well.
Well, that's how everyone would react. If someone pulled that off, I'd want someone to be filming too. But, we'll get on to the Six Nations currently. Obviously, Wales fan, Ireland bet Wales the weekend, so apologies for that.
You don't have to apologise.
Yeah, as if I had anything to do with it. But
Brian O'Driscoll on the other hand.
Yeah.
No, I've actually, no.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. What's he ever done? So what's your kind of views? Obviously, France are as hot shit as they say now. The way they're playing. Do you see them going on to Grand Slam success, or do you think they're maybe 1 year just a bit too early?
I don't know. I was asked by the Pro 14 rather. They did a long article of different people and who they all thought would win the Six Nations. And I said France would win it. Then they asked me, do you think it'll be a Grand Slam? And I went, sure, why not? And they printed that as yes. Squidge Rugby thinks it'll be a definite Grand Slam for France.
A Squidge Rugby guarantee.
He ran the stats into 98% likelihood.
Yeah. You're in a laboratory of some description.
Yeah. And I'm not confident they will, but I feel like they are kind of in the driver's seat at the minute. I really like the French team. I think they're a lot of fun to watch.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's 2 tough away trips in Cardiff and Murrayfield, but the way Wales played last weekend, I feel like France should be favourites. I'd like to think Pivac will sort things out over the next couple of weeks, but we'll see. You feel they should have enough to beat Scotland in Murrayfield, unless they are just knackered from the way Sean Edwards wants them defending and playing. And then the question becomes, if Ireland lose at Twickenham next week, I feel like they will win that game in Paris. But if it's a Grand Slam decider between 2 teams going for a Grand Slam, that's far more interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And that can go either way. That would, because I can't remember the last time that happened. You had 2013 when Wales won the championship they won, but England won the Grand Slam. I can't remember the last time both teams were going for Grand Slams. I don't think it's happened in the last 15, 20 years.
Was when Ireland won in 2009 when we bet Wales in Cardiff, were they both going Grand Slams?
No, we'd lost to France narrowly. So
okay.
The couple where Wales would have, or one team would have won the championship and not the Grand Slam.
Yeah,
but if it's Ireland, yeah.
Look, I hope we beat England next week. I hope that's possible. What's your views on the Wales obviously situation? Because it started off obviously well. I know beating Italy isn't. I said that we do a weekly kind of Six Nations review podcast as well on here.
Okay.
But I kind of said at the time it's tough because Ireland obviously played Scotland first, and then Wales played Italy. But it was tough to kind of tell because obviously beating Italy, it's not the hardest thing to do at the moment, obviously.
No.
But then and Ireland, then a hard fought win against Scotland. It was still tough to decide who was going into that game with kind of more momentum.
Yeah.
But what's your views on the whole Pivac kind of era? Are you positive? Are you optimistic? Pessimistic?
I want to remain optimistic for now. Anyway, I think the attack looks far better than it was under Gatland already. Things are clicking. We look genuinely dangerous, and I love the way Bigger and Tipper often are bringing runners onto the ball. I think it's really interesting and kind of innovative, and that's cool and that's good. The defence I'm less fond of, but I think it's so jarring coming from Wales being for the last 12 years a defensive team. that they would put in. Remember that game in Cardiff against Ireland in 2015 when there was those two phases of like 20 odd, or two passages of 20 odd phase defence, which were incredible. And Jamie Roberts tackle on the try line and so on. It's kind of jarring to then come from that to that the way George North was caught so narrow twice.
That was
last
amazing
weekend.
in that video, because when you watch it live, you kind of see it, but then when you actually pointed it out in the video, I was like, oh my god, that's so obvious. Like, he just thinks he's on the wing
Yeah.
for a few seconds.
Yeah.
It's amazing that a player that, for George North has been around for so long, that he can still make that silly of a mistake.
Exactly, yeah. So there's things like that, and then there's just little system errors that hopefully the defense sorts itself out, and hopefully they manage to work on it a bit. But my worry is that we could become Scotland, or Scotland, maybe 2 years ago, who turned up, scored a few nice tries, but you beat. I'm worried that's where Wales kind of were in about 2005, 2006. But I'm hopeful he's got enough to build on Pivac that Gatland left behind, that he can do something with it.
Yeah, Ireland and Wales obviously in quite similar situations with new coaches and uncertain futures in a lot of sense, because I'm sure you've been following the Irish situation over here, but after the World Cup there was a lot of cries for change, me being one of them, because my personal view is I think we need to change a lot of the culture within Irish rugby, as in to be more expansive, and obviously that doesn't happen overnight. That takes years. So I feel like we could still win Six Nations in between now and the next World Cup, but when we come to the biggest stage of all, the flaws are still there. So I think Ireland kind of have to make a decision, as in, do we want to just keep winning the odd Six Nations and failing at World Cups, or do we want to really actually have a go at this? But there's so many other influences that come into that. So obviously the Six Nations is where Ireland gets most of its funding from. At the end of this year, the World Cup seedings are being made. So this year I was hoping that they would use this year as a total experiment year of just like, let's try stuff. But that's not possible then when you have a rookie head coach who obviously wants to win as many games as possible, and then your seedings at the end of the year being dictated. But then, sorry to go on a bit of a rant, but
no, go. Yeah, go.
Who's interviewing who here? My mate.
I'm happy to swap players.
Yeah, exactly. My mate made a good point. The seedings are kind of, once you're in the top 8, you're still going to have to beat these teams to win a World Cup.
Yeah.
Whether you're the 3rd seed or the 6th seed, you're still going to have to beat at least one team. So I don't know.
And because I look at it and I think, okay, I really don't want the All Blacks, I don't want the Springboks, but I also really don't want France, because they're going to be the host nation. And you then, when you begin to add up the teams I don't want, it's like, oh, actually, it's not possible for us to just have a pool of Uruguay, Fiji. Oh, no, I don't want Fiji either.
Or Japan.
Uruguay, Tonga, and exactly. So as you say, you're going to have to be at least one world-class team. And like nominally, Wales' draw in the last World Cup, for example, was good, but because we got Fiji as our kind of equivalent instead of Argentina or Scotland or whoever, that meant we got Fiji and Georgia, who were probably the two most physically demanding Tier 2 nations. So there isn't a good draw, and World Rugby is getting stronger and stronger all the time. And Ireland was actually exactly the same, in that you got Japan, and you thought, oh, actually, that's okay. Sorry to bring it up, we should be able to beat Japan.
How could you? How could you? This interview is over. Yeah, I watched that game live, and it was 80 minutes of just torture. But
it was. I watched it in a bar in Tokyo, and it was incredible.
Oh, that was a better atmosphere than my house.
I can imagine.
But that's the problem. But Japan, they're so good to watch, and like, that's the kind of culture of play that I want Ireland to go towards. Obviously, that's not something you can do just overnight. But I think, and the France situation here is, if you're looking at the pros and cons of totally gutting out a team and starting again, France at the moment are very much in the pro column, because they've loads of young players in who are used to winning at the underage level. They bring Sean Edwards in, and whether the team of 2 years ago of France may not have listened to Sean Edwards, these young guys are different because they're used to winning, and they are now seeing the benefits of that, and should do over the next 4 years leading up to a World Cup where they're at home.
Exactly. And there's also that thing of if you're 21 and you're coming into international rugby for the first time, and your coach there is, Fabien Galtier, who very well regarded coach and very well regarded player before that, and Sean Edwards, who as being the best defensive coach in the world. That's been his reputation for however long. You listen to those guys, in a way. If you're if you're Johan Uge or whoever, and you've been in and around and you've seen the coach change so many times, it's a very different environment to go, oh, okay, this is this week's coach, and then he'll be out in 2 years' time.
Yeah, it's just France at the moment are a very scary prospect. As in, for years people have said, oh, if only France could defend, and now they might have the smartest brain on the defensive side of the ball. So that could be very scary, especially when someone made a good point after the first France game. Someone was like, "There's 9 weeks of more coaching from Sean Edwards before we travel to Paris to play them," and I was like, "Oh my god, that's terrifying."
You have also got, though, it's 9 weeks of them being coached by Sean Edwards. And there's a reason when Gatland used to always go on about, oh, we're the fittest team in the world. It's because they had to be, because the way Sean Edwards just beats a team is so demanding. And I think if they're going to lose any game, I think there's something, the Cardiff away, because they've just gone 2 big weeks of that. But that last game, actually, you look at it and you go, oh, actually, they could be knackered by the last 20 minutes because they've looked tired in the last 20 minutes in the last 2 games. But once they're fit enough to run the way he wants them to in a couple of years' time, they're going to be scary.
Oh my god, yeah. And yeah, devil's advocate, they really, they blitzed England for 50 or 60 minutes, but then England also were quite sluggish. They were very like the first half of the World Cup final. They were knocking balls on.
Yeah.
Italy obviously wasn't much of a challenge either. So it'd be interesting to see if they do go and play Wales, and Wales are on form, and it could be their first real test. It'd be interesting to see because they tried their best to throw that England game away as well. In classic French style. So that's why I'm kind of saying maybe they're just a year away of being Grand Slam contenders, but hopefully Ireland beat them in the end, but we'll see. Are you, the England situation, do you think it's a bit of a World Cup hangover? Is it, what's your views on the England situation?
I think part of it was just they were caught out by a better team on that opening day. I think part of it is not necessarily World Cup hangover, but there's an element of them looking at this as the start of the next 4 years. Eddie Jones has said, like, my target is 4, even though he's only contracted for 2 at the moment. He wants to build towards the next World Cup. And there were moments in that first game when he was doing, like, that Maul thing felt like him just kind of trolling and making a statement of, well, actually, we're ready for this time. And I'm talking about them wanting to play a new dynamic, to play the best rugby ever. I feel like he's got an eye on the next World Cup, which isn't a bad thing at all. And an eye on the last World Cup, and he sort of got caught out missing what's directly in front of him because he's looking in 2 different directions.
That's the. I kind of wish Ireland was more like that as well and looking ahead. But then, as you say, like, it's tough. You have to decide as a coaching staff, what do you want to focus on? Which and there's so many things that can change in a 4-year cycle, which is obviously tough too. But
which would you lean to, just out of interest? Would you rather target World Cup or
me personally?
I
think I'd focus on a World Cup. We've won 6 Nations before, and don't get me wrong, it's great and it's fantastic as a supporter to, like, we're 2 games in and we're still in with a chance of a Grand Slam, but I just can't have another quarterfinal exit and like a team playing badly in a World Cup. I feel like, what Einstein says, doing the same thing over and again and expecting different results, it's insanity. And I feel like we do that. And the big conversation of Cooney versus Murray and picking players in form, and I don't know. I just thought it was the perfect situation this year to just go look at, Andy Farrell is coming in and it's a clean slate. Let's just start again. And like I personally am still in the belief that Cooney should have started that Scotland game. I think it sets a terrible precedent that, like, John Cooney was literally the best scrum half in the world for a space of 2 months there, and he still can't get a position ahead of Conor Murray. And it's nothing against Conor Murray, and he's playing quite well now, but I feel like if who's to say he couldn't be playing even better in a year's time if Cooney has dislodged him from that spot?
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I'd rather do that and then also perform badly at a World Cup, because then at least we know we've tried it and it's something different. Whereas at the moment, we could win maybe 2 Six Nations in the next 4 years, or 1 Six Nations, and the same thing happens again then. Teams are ready for us and stuff. But look, I'm not hired by anyone to give my opinion. I just have a small podcast.
I find that interesting. I just find it interesting where people come down on, because I know since that World Cup last year, and since looking at it a year out and going, actually, we've got a chance here, that's become the focus 100% for me. Is the interest in the Six Nations is almost the ranking points, and yes, I want to win the Six Nations, but now we've lost a game, it becomes, actually, we're not going to get a Grand Slam. We've lost to Ireland, so realistically, we've got to beat everyone, in order to have any shot, and hope someone else drops a game. So I want them to try and focus on building for the next World Cup. And I don't know quite what that looks like. We've already got Thomas Williams starting over Gareth Davis, and I'd rather that, which, is a reflection, not to the extent of the Conor Murray, Gareth Davis situation. No, John Cooney situation. But yeah, no, it's where I've landed. I'm interested that's because historically Ireland have targeted Six Nations rather than.
It's the big divide at the moment among supporters, because obviously the World Cup is still quite fresh in the sense that it was only last year, and I don't know. I just it like with Sexton, obviously he's still an amazing player, but he's not going to be your starting out half come the next World Cup. Well, maybe I think in his head he still thinks he is. But you want to give someone like Carberry or whoever it is, even Ross Byrne, the most reps as possible leading up to a World Cup. But again, it's still 4 years away, and it's sort of it's a fine balance probably have to strike. But look, I just,
and 2 World Cups in a row now. Joe Schmidt hasn't blooded anyone other than Sexton really to start at 10. Carberry started the one game against Australia and got brought off after about 50 minutes, and that's about it. And one against Scotland. And then Sexton's got injured for a key game, and they've lost that game. So it is a case of building depth, even if it isn't necessarily in the first game of the Six Nations or in a key game. It's just making sure these players have played big games. And it's part of what Gatlin did so well. It's part of what Eddie Jones did so well. And why those teams were making finals, because they were making changes, and they had a squad of about 30 players who were good enough to play to a World Cup level.
Yeah, and as you documented in most of your videos, they were so regiment in the way they played that they were so predictable. And then you look at Leinster, who play a totally different style and are more expansive, but then at the same time, they're dominating games in a way that Ireland can't dominate games. But it's definitely a puzzle that needs to be worked on. I'm willing to give Andy Farrell all the time in the world. I think I like the fact that he's passionate, and he, even in the 2 games, it pans to the whatever managerial box, whatever. And Schmidt used to be like a robot, no emotions at all.
Yeah.
Whereas Andy Farrell is getting into it, and I like that. I like my coach to be like that. But it's the same look for every. But I think Ireland always tend to do well in the year before a World Cup, where other teams are sort of trying stuff and plotting and planning, and I just don't think that's a fluke or a coincidence. But again, no one cares what I think.
You'd be surprised. Hey, we know for a fact at least 32 people do.
32 people. So. Again, I don't want to bring it up, but I'm a big deal. So predictions then. We'll finish on predictions for the Six Nations. Who do you think is going to come out on top?
France, I'm sticking with. Still thinking France.
And Wales then, do you feel third, fourth, second?
I feel like third is a realistic target, but we do have to go to Twickenham yet, and this French team is far better than the ones we've beaten over the last kind of 10 years. Because I think it was 2010 was the last time France won in Cardiff.
2010 I only seen was the last time France won the Six Nations.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
They won a Grand Slam, and that was a big part of it. Francois Tranduk interception try in half time. But that's it. I can see us finishing fourth. but almost second or third of the target at this point.
Yeah, it should be this weekend. It's amazing how quickly you get used to it. This weekend there's no games, and you're like, God damn,
Yeah,
I wish there was some games on. But
gotta get used to Pro 14 again.
I know, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, domestic. Oh, boring.
Yeah.
That's why we'll finish up now. Again, Robbie, thank you very much for your
Okay.
time.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to plug your Twitter? I'm sure everyone's listening already knows it, but just in case they don't.
Yeah, it's at Squidge Rugby or at Squidgy Goat for the one where it's mostly just me moaning about Brexit and films.
I seen that actually. I seen some interesting tweets, but it was actually good to see because I only had seen your rugby personality, so it was interesting to see your other interests as well, which is good.
Yeah.
That's great again. Yeah, follow him on YouTube, guys. Obviously, most of you probably already do, but you will not be disappointed. There's some great insights and some great analysis that you would never have seen before. Personally, then follow me, guys, on Twitter at none_podcast. The podcast now is available pretty much on every platform out there, so give it a listen. So thanks again, Robbie.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.